Welcome to the Rabbi and the Shrink. And today is number 14, and we have one of the most fascinating minds and personalities, John Register, CSP, a world-class speaker and a really thoughtful, ethical guy. John Register, welcome.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. What's going on, all you ethical people out there? The Rabbi, the Shrink, I love it. It's great. I love that title.
Well,
We're
so
delighted to have you with us.
we really are. So what does your message have to do with ethics?
So my message is all around embracing this new normal mindset. And I found that, now we'll unpack that a little bit later, but what I found is that in this process, a lot of people are very fearful of telling their truth. They're very comfortable telling other people's truths. They're comfortable with what society has told them truth should be, but they haven't really dug down into the core essence of what drives their fear in the first place. So any type of thing that happens in our community and we go to our own playbooks, we don't drill down to what is the object of our fears. So that's kind of what I help people unpack to not let them off the hook in that. And that scares a lot of folks. But if it scares you, then you're either going to lean into me or you're going to lean away from me. And that's okay, because if you lean away from me, you're just not my people.
Well,
I've
we're
heard it said
leaning in,
that,
sir. We're leaning in. Rabbi, what are your thoughts on this?
I've heard it said that all fear stems from fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
And I think it's a useful formulation, because we come into a new situation with people. We don't know these people. We don't know how to present ourselves with confidence that we will be received by them in the way we want to be.
Right.
And that hesitation often creates all kinds of impediments, don't you think?
Yes. And I believe what happens is, why are we telling ours when we are in a fearful position and we don't know what the next thing is going to be? Why is that true for us? So why am I fearful about that particular thing? And usually it has to do with some type of external force that we have thought about or seen before, and that calls up in our memory, and then our memory then pushes us to a place where, oh, I don't want that again. Example, there are kids in the airport. They are looking at me for the first time, and they are 5 and 7 years of age. They're talking to their mother, their matriarch, and they're looking at my artificial leg about 20 feet away from me, and they're saying, "Hey, mommy, look at that guy's leg, look at that guy's leg. There goes Robot Man." And a whole myriad of stories start coming out from that, right? So I overhear them. Number one, I go back to reading my little USA Today newspaper that I have in my lap, and I'm just kind of chuckling about it. Everybody else in the gate waiting area begins then to say, "That's impolite. Those kids shouldn't be doing that. Bad mother. Get those kids out of here. Leave that man alone." What's the fear that's going on in their headspace? What story are they telling themselves? And the woman then gets up and begins to walk the two kids over my direction. I think she's going to just walk by me, right? Like the old song says, "Walk on by." But no, she stops and she leans in and she begins to ask me the question, "Sir, my children are fascinated by the artificial leg. You've overcome so much adversity. You're such an inspiration. Would you please tell them, my kids, what happened?" Well, even in their statement, why does she think I've overcome so much adversity? Why am I such an inspiration? I mean, I could be an ex-murderer. I'm not. but the point is, we tell ourselves these stories based upon some of the experiences that we've had. And can we actually embrace what I call this new normal, where new is no prior point of reference, where we don't bring our baggage with us, and we really honor and celebrate the individuals who are coming into our lives, and really trying to experience that for ourselves so that we can experience it with others.
I know from my point of view, if I would, see a person with, whatever kind of condition or situation that I was curious about, I know I would be reticent to initiate a conversation, because I want to respect that person's personal space. Maybe they don't want to talk about it. do you have a suggestion for kind of how to balance? I mean, what those kids did from a place of innocence, it would be nice if we could do it as adults too, to sort of find ways of connecting with people and understanding other people instead of being afraid that we might give offense and therefore we just remain distant from them.
So I would say, how are we approaching that situation, right? The kids are coming with innocence. So when do we lose ours? When do we lose the ability to just, I'm inquisitive about something and I just want to know? Well, and I think what happens is we've had so much time in our lives that now we think, oh, this has to be politically correct or this is not politically correct. But if I just want to know and ask the question, I think it will come from a place and a spirit of doing so, of doing that, like with the kids, the innocence of what those kids just had. There have been many times adults have asked me, hey, can I ask you a question about your artificial limb? And it's done with respect. Now, there's a point. Now, let me try to understand, articulate the point where I think or crosses the line. And it has to do with what I believe are the nomenclatures we want to assign or put on people. What do I call you? I don't know. So therefore, are you a person with a disability? Are you an amputee? Are you an African-American? Are you Black American? What do you want to be called? And so these things are trying to assign categories in my mind so I can accept you in my own terms and my own conditions. I want to be able to tolerate you in my own way, is what I'm saying. So if I'm going to tolerate you, and toleration is hierarchical, right? It's not bringing us closer together, it's actually repelling us. Because tolerating is, I'm going to tolerate you based upon what I believe, what box you need to fit in my world. And so that's this place and space I think where people begin to come from. And it might sound innocent, it might be packaged in innocence, but it's not coming from an empathetic standpoint. An empathetic standpoint, it's coming from a sympathetic standpoint. Whereas I'm going to allow you into my space only on my terms and my conditions. And that's where I think the shift actually comes. So in that same, that's what people were doing in the airport with all the people in the gate waiting area. They were trying to assign and ascribe what was going on, what society had dictated to them. And that began to kind of put them down a different path. The answer to the question is, what do you call me? You call me John. You call me JR. That's where we start first. And that's, we don't get that. I got to put you in my box because that's where you fit in my world. You fit in this box. No, I don't fit in your box. My name is John. And that's how you should see me and how you should call me. It's the same thing when people have names that are very difficult to pronounce, maybe in the English language. Don't try to call them Joe with a hard name because it's easier for you. Understand and learn their name because that's who they are called. So don't operate in privilege, operate in respect and honor of the person of how they are called in their name. You wouldn't go if your name, Rabbi Yonason, you wouldn't go and want somebody else to say your name something different. I'm just going to call you Jan, because I can't pronounce the rest of it. No, you say we're going to honor and respect how you are called in this world.
Respect is, I think, so rare these days when people are uncomfortable. It's certainly easier to go back to some sort of category, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think about it in terms of, okay, let's take it out of, all the kind of speaking and all the fluff and everything. And you put it into, I go to a nail salon, right? Because I got one good foot left. I'm going to take care of my foot. I go there with my wife. All you ladies know this, you go get your nails done, you go get your feet done. And a lot of times people that are working there are Vietnamese or they're in the Asian community. And what I do is they say, well, my name's Mary. I said, no, it's not. Your mother did not, when you came out, did not call you Mary. What's your name? And I asked the name, and you should see the shift in saying, and saying when they hear their own name being said back by their customer, their client, right? And that is a very powerful thing. We all want to hear our own names spoken back to us because there's life, there's power in that. And I think that's one of the most ethical things you can do is honor somebody in the space where they are.
Making the effort to meet them on their terms.
Absolutely.
And show that you respect them where they are, for whom they are. And that's what pulls us together.
And learn a little bit of language, doggone it.
I think so. And even if we never pronounce it right. To this day, when I came to this country, my name is Margarita Eugenia Gurri. Hard name, right? And I got called Margie, or my middle name Egania. So in middle school, I was Eugenia. They called me Egania, making fun of my name.
Mhm.
The good thing I thought about that is that I always knew instantly who my friends were and who weren't.
Yes.
And then you also see who looks ignorant. I'm not the one that looks ignorant.
Right.
Did it hurt my feelings? Yes, but I actually by then had low expectations of most people and realized it was my job to raise them up,
Yes.
to somehow earn some interest and curiosity.
Or just
Charlotte asked a question to that
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Can you point to where your curiosity is coming from? Is it plain ignorance, or do you have to have a story that makes asking more relevant? Interesting question.
Do I say it one more time? Do I think?
All right. Can you point to where your curiosity is coming from? Is it plain ignorance, or do you have to have a story that makes asking more relevant?
I think it's a yes and. I think it's a both and.
Okay.
I think we can come from a place of ignorance and we just want to experience and know. And I also think that there may be a story that we might be, either working on as a speaker or in our business, in our community, that this might fit with where I want to take my organization. Is that story relevant? Let me ask some more questions about it. I mean, think about it, okay, I'll put on speaker hat. When I'm talking with clients, and I just did it today, I was trying to understand why I'm the one that's in the room. Why did they pick me to be there? I'm searching now. You got me in all this, Margarita, you got me in all this other stuff. So I'm searching for something right now. And so here it is. So they said, we cannot, our employees have turned out our voice on us, on the CEO, and we just can't say it anymore. So therefore I just flip it. I say, has your company tuned out your voice? Because that's why they're bringing me in, because they want another voice to help their voice. And we can turn and flip those questions, be more curious about our clients or our business professionals, our family members. And really, and I just did a podcast on that's out there with Diana Kander, fantastic person, on curiosity. So we just did that one like last Thursday. So you should check it out because it's a really great podcast. The amazing thing is, once we begin to ask those questions, become more curious about it, our world opens up. We become more educated. We understand, and not just in that one binary place, in that one or solitary place, it expands, because we see the intentional congruence of everything that hits around it in all aspects of our life. So it's not one thing. So that's a great question.
It was. There's more to the question, but first, John has an amazing podcast, Life's New Normal podcast. And his whole thing about helping people imagine, ignite, and inspire. I mean, I think there's just, and he says, we don't overcome adversity, we create a new normal. All right, so back to the question. Apparently the question that Charlotte had asked was really to the rabbi. Okay. You haven't been on our podcast before. I can't seem to call him Yonason. I always call him Rabbi. So that's his name.
Just don't call me late for dinner.
Yeah, I will never do that. All right, especially not for the bacon. All right. So the context was for Yonason wondering how he could ask about an artificial leg, but it was hanging too long for discussion to move on. So then the issue is, how do you ask about all of that?
Yeah. So I mean,
how do you ask?
In our acronym of ethics, the I is being inquisitive. I didn't make the C curiosity because I'm using the C for something else, but the idea of wanting to expand my knowledge base, wanting to understand the world I live in, wanting to understand the people with whom I come in contact. And my question really arose because we're living in a world where there is so much concern for phrasing things in exactly the right way. And there are those who are telling us that even the perception of being whether impolite or insensitive is itself a transgression. It makes it very difficult for us. We're making it almost impossible for us to be genuinely curious because we're so afraid of the consequences of being misinterpreted.
I think so. And I think some of the problem comes from the word ignorance. I think ignorance has become a negative thing. Oh, he's so ignorant. when truly ignorance means we don't know. And so I think that as a society, we're pretty uncomfortable with not knowing, but we're good at making stuff up. And I think that's one of the problems when we're afraid of not knowing or looking stupid. We sometimes fill in the blank with an opinion or what our parents said. And instead of taking the time, and the rabbi and I've talked about this repeatedly, instead of deciding what our own thoughts, values, ethics are, or even our own level of curiosity, we borrow someone else's. And borrowed ethics is never a mature ethics. And what John Register is saying is create your new normal. And he and I had an interesting discussion that I said that I have a problem with the term new normal because in the military, they use it all the time. You go on deployment, you come back, and the goal is to establish a new normal. And I said, well, I think that's a really low standard. Normal is boring. Who here is normal? Certainly no one here or in our audience is normal. What is normal? And John Register, I loved your answer. Please share with everyone that answer that you gave me.
Well, it is boring. My answer to that is I've been using the term for, I don't know, 20, 25 years now, because my wife gifted it to me when I was in one of my lowest moments in life with my artificial leg. Well, I didn't have the artificial leg then. It was just my leg was amputated. And I was really going down a downward spiral. And I was wondering who I am, what's my identity, is she going to stay with me, and all these fears that were coming up. And then she said, you know, we're going to get through this together. This is just our new normal. And when she said that, she really baselined my entire existence. So over the course of the next 20 years, I've been really leaning into what that term actually means. And a lot of times, like you were saying, it can just be like a throwaway line because we use it all the time. But if we really unpack what it's saying, new means no prior point of reference. So if we take COVID, for example, how many of us have lived through COVID? This is a very new experience for us, yet we're trying to pull on every single thing that was not new to try to explain this new existence that we're in. And we're struggling, we're losing oxygen out of our environment because we're trying to put something old into something that was new. Can't do it. The second thing is the normal is the everyday typical occurrence of a thought or an action. So what are the rituals that we have in place that lead on to a rhythm? The rhythm then elevates us to a rise, and the rise then produces a result in our life. Much like the Olympic and Paralympic athletes, the Olympic motto is Citius Altius Fortius. And those Latin words, when translated into the English language, means swifter, higher, stronger. And those words, which I tell my audience is, they're not written in the superlative of the word. It's not swiftest, highest, strongest, but they're written with this ER stem ending that we can be the swiftest today and be swifter tomorrow. We can jump the highest today, jump higher tomorrow, be the strongest today, be stronger tomorrow. So when we're looking at the new normal, no prior point of reference, and the normal as the everyday typical occurrence of a thought or an action, it's never a destination. We don't arrive at it. It's only a plateau by which we grow.
And what I love about that, John, is that in Hebrew, the word for a spiritual level is madrega, which translates literally as a step, as in on a staircase. And if you think about the nature of steps, the moment you reach the top of one step, you are simultaneously at the bottom of the next step. And so there is no stopping point. Wherever I am now is my reference point of how I'm going to proceed. Whatever I've accomplished is simply preparation for what I need to accomplish next. And in fact, King Solomon says, fortunate, happy are those who wait attentively by my doorways. Why does he phrase in the plural, my doorways? He's talking about in the voice of wisdom.
Yes.
Because the moment you go through one door, right? You know, it's hard to go through a door. A door is a point of transition. We like it where we are. We're comfortable. I push myself to go through the door. And what's the next challenge? Oh, now I've made it. Now I'm where I need to be. No, now look for the next door. As soon as I've come to a new place, what's the next step? What's the next challenge? How do I go from where I am and build on that to accomplish more, to achieve more, to make more of myself?
Madraga. I just wrote that word down. Madraga. I just wrote it down.
Rabbi, could you put that in the chat? Madraga?
Sure. Should I write it in Hebrew?
Well, yeah, well, no. You can sound it out in English.
You can write it. I don't know if I can read it.
That was he's funny. All right. So I think one of the issues that we're dealing with this idea of new normal and baseline, this is for me, so as a consultant, I'm a psychologist, so as a consultant, I get sent out to help leaders, teams, organizations, often when there's been an ethical oops. And especially and I work with athletes too. So some of them, what got them into trouble is their next step was 10 paces below. They had a fall of some sort, an ethical dilemma. They just weren't on their game. They got lazy because they were so good, so they didn't keep trying, right? Mm-hmm. And so then they cheat or they sabotage others. And I think one of the starting points is, how do we handle the backward step that we find ourselves in? So I'd like you to speak to that, John Register, CSP.
So I'm writing down here, since the rabbi.
That is one of, for me, the doorways for getting into ethical and legal problem.
The rabbi talked about Solomon, so we can keep going back that way and go to Psalms and pride of the Proverbs. Pride comes before a fall. And so how do we manage after we have fallen, because we're so prideful, whatever it was that led us in that ethical dilemma? How do we get back up? And I believe there's only one way to do it, and that's by truth telling, the absolute truth of what happened and why we were in that position in the first place, so that we can honor that space for ourselves, and then others can see it and we can lift. The challenge is, we get into these perceptions. I think, I'm not sure who said it earlier, that these perceptions about ourselves and how other people perceive us, and we want to live up to that image of other individuals, other people believing for us what we can or cannot do, which is based upon what they believe they could or could not do if they were in our situation. So the fear, like if we go back to my own story, the fear of my saying my wife Alice is going to leave me because of this artificial leg, my new condition now, it's not, my fear is not her leaving. My fear is, am I desirable? Am I still of value? Do I matter? Am I enough? And those are very hard questions to answer for ourselves, because we may not like the answer when we look in the mirror. And so there comes a time where we have to maybe do some work in that space to get back on track. Because when ethics happen in a case like that, maybe there's some trust that has been lost by people. And so you have to work really hard to get that trust back. So that's when the rituals to the rhythm become very important, that you can show yourself, trustworthy again in that capacity after a fall has happened.
I wish all oh, go ahead.
It just got me thinking. It's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's still on point. That I was for a long time studying with a fellow, and he was he had grown up in the Soviet Union, and he admitted he had a lot of mindset left over from being in that culture, and he was very opinionated. He was very, he claimed to set very high standards for himself and very high standards for other people as well, and so when he would be very intolerant when he sees people that they are, they're not entirely, they're hypocritical, they are insincere, they are unwilling to look honestly at themselves. And I would go back and forth with him on this. And at one point I said to him, if you saw somebody come in on crutches, would you tell that person, pull yourself together and walk like a normal person? He said, of course not. So that's because you can see this person's disability. We all have disabilities. We all have character flaws. We all have baggage. We all have history that impairs us that we are struggling with. Try to give the same consideration. The sages teach, give every person the benefit of the doubt, but with the flexibility of Hebrew, you could also read it, give not every person, but give the whole person the benefit of the doubt. Try to look at the whole person. Try to imagine or recognize or discover what unique challenges or circumstances that individual may have to deal with that fortunately you don't have those challenges, but you have different challenges. And if we think of ourselves as all trying to overcome some kind of disability, some kind of handicap, some kind of background, some kind of character flaw, that would give you a lot more forgiving of other people, as well as being a lot more forgiving of ourselves.
I think John Register said it, it's in the truth. Many people don't want to say the truth to themselves, let alone out loud.
Yeah.
They think they're unlovable unless they're perfect or at the top level that they just achieved. They don't believe any backward is just part of growth. It's fascinating. And yet I think as a consultant, I see that when individuals, teams, and organizations go backwards, it's often the springboard for them to move forward. So they see that they stop growing or something no longer works. There's an opportunity to be innovative. John Register, speak to that issue, to use as these backward steps as a gift.
Well, I think you're exactly right. Is they are gifts, and there's a lot of work out there on failing fast, and maybe you fail fast because you do hit the springboard and you can jump higher. I think people mistake it for resilience, getting tough in that resilience muscle, because in resilience, there's if it's a likened to a rubber band, and you stretch the rubber band out and it comes back to, the elasticity brings it back into its shape. It never really comes back to its original shape. It's always lost a little bit of something. In my case, my rubber band actually broke. So, how do you repair that in that place? And I really believe what folks are searching for, what they need in that moment, is hearing their own voice again, and the truth of what they're hearing for themselves, and where those other voices coming from. So in resilience, though, the 10 letters, I use it, 10 letters in resilience remind me of 10 hurdles in a hurdle race that you have to get over. That was a hurdler. And embedded, the starters before the race says quiet for the start. And embedded in the word resilience is the word silence. And we don't necessarily go back and find that spot. So I challenge, even everybody that's on right now, is if you struggle in that space of, there's so much noise, there's so much clutter, find the space that's your quiet zone, not necessarily free of noise, but where do you get your most ideas? Where do they come from? Are you driving your car? Are you riding your bike? Activity, exercise, walking, jogging, hiking? Are you in the shower? Are you brushing your teeth when you first get up in the morning? Where is it that you find that quiet spot and make that your ritual, that you find yourself in that spot so you can set yourself for the day? For me, I love taking walks around the neighborhood. And when I get out of sorts, I'm like, what is going on? What's my day? Why am I feeling out of sorts? It's probably because I haven't done one of those rituals, and it hasn't set me up. So I have a par, and I want to keep raising that par up, right? I want to keep on getting par higher so that I can be more productive, better than I was the day before. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but that's my answer.
Good answer.
So much of life is habit. And if we develop good habits, then we make it easier for ourselves to deal with the areas that don't fall into habit. They say that Steve Jobs had his whole closet was filled with black turtlenecks and jeans, because he didn't want to have to make any more decisions about mundane things than he needed to. And it's true. And as they talk about decision fatigue, that why do really successful people do incredibly stupid things sometimes? It's because they are successful and their brains are constantly being challenged with decisions and dilemmas and evaluations. And then they reach a point where they simply they're mentally exhausted.
Yeah.
And what should have been an easy decision ends up tripping them up. So the rituals that you describe, it's a way for us to get back into, as you describe, that rhythm, that pattern, those good habits that become the baseline from which we can then meet the challenges in a more successful and a more effective way.
I'm really resonating with the quote you just said by Steve Jobs, because where my brain went to was OD Green with the military. I don't have to think about anything in my closet. I have that camouflage uniform or that camouflage uniform. And I have those boots right there and those OD Green socks and that OD Green underwear and that OD Green t-shirt. And out the door I went. The hardest choice I had to make when I separated from the military and I transitioned was the first day going into a corporate office trying to figure out what to wear. Hardest choice, hardest decision.
Well, and each of the warriors I've talked to that comes back from a deployment or from a long training comes back to a civilian situation, even if they're just on leave, and they are stressed out by those basic choices. Mm-hmm. What to wear? Do they make their bed? What are the anchoring rituals? And I know many people that were in the military or even in orphanages, where the first thing they do is what they were doing when life was crazy. They made their bed, they did a prayer, whatever it is they needed to do, those anchoring rituals. So I like that John challenged you all to look at what are your anchoring rituals and what is the next best step from there. Because if we're going to be talking about baselines and steps, what if we're paralyzed, John Register and Rabbi? What do we do then? Because many people feel like a cat with too many fleas. They get catatonic, they don't know where to go. But then how is your next best step going to be defined and discovered?
I'd love to hear from the Rabbi on that one.
Boom. I think a lot of, what was that show they used to have? One of the game shows where you have a lifeline.
Yes.
If you get stuck.
Who wants to be a millionaire?
We need to develop support systems. And that again is something I think Facebook, among its other issues, has devalued the term friend. If you have a handful of good friends, literally a handful of good friends at any point in your life, you're rich. And what is a friend? It's something that the word in Hebrew is chaver, which comes from the root meaning connection. We're bound together. When Jonathan, the son of Saul, saw King David, he wasn't King David yet. He saw David go out and fight Goliath. And not only did he defeat him, and not only did he defeat him in a miraculous way, but when he came back and the king said, "Who are you?" He said, "I am the son of your maidservant." He said, I didn't do anything that wasn't a duty, that wasn't needed. No one else was stepping up. I stepped up. And Jonathan, the prince, he was next in line to be king. He saw this, and it said that his heart was bonded with David. They hadn't spoken. He just saw his dignity, his humility, his nobility of spirit. He says, this is a person that I'm connected to, that I want to have in my life. And we need to seek out people of quality, people of stature in character, and make them court them, invest in them. Because then when we come to these places where we're paralyzed, where we're stuck, where we just don't know where to go, we have people that we can reach out to help get our bearings, because you just can't do it alone. It's just too complicated.
So you mean the 5,000 friends we have on Facebook, we can't reach out to those individuals?
Yeah, well, one of my students told her mother that she just had to invite her 600 closest friends to her wedding.
Well, and I think that one of the things I see is that someone who's stumbling, they sometimes, even if they have just 5 really great friends, they often feel they cannot reveal the truth to them or burden them. And we've talked about that, the term burden. There's giving and receiving, and both are very valuable. Many of you out there are terrible at receiving, which means you're not affording others the opportunity to give or to be of service. And Rabbi, like you're talking about, not all of us are honorable and humble and whatever in any given moment. And even then we can't confide. But what if we've had a yucky moment, we've done something yucky? Then for sure, we're going to isolate ourselves. So what do you guys suggest to do then? How can ethics and this next best step help us?
You know, that's hard, because that gets into that mirror looking.
Yes.
And, you know, Michael Jackson, I think, I said it best, you know, I'm going to start with the man in the mirror. I'm looking for him to change his ways. and a lot of times, at least in my life, it's what is going to come out that I don't want to come out. What's going to be on the front page of the New York Times that I don't want to be there. And we can also look at it from the opposite standpoint too, right? What do we see about other people that come out in the front page of the New York Times or is broadcast over, that we relish in saying, see, I told you so. And that just drives our fear again of coming out ourselves into what we have gone through. And so it's easy to cast stones on somebody else that's been discovered or found out. But what if that was us being broadcast on the front page too? How would we want other people to treat us in that environment? I'll tell you, I had a challenge, and this was something that was done. It was something that was done where we lose that trust. And so I was told to go out, and I had to let an athlete go, right? When I was working for the World Class Athlete Program, I had to let an athlete go. First time I ever had to do that. First time I had to, quote unquote, fire somebody. And my stomach was in knots. We had given this person, you know, multiple chances to change events and do all these things. And the whole group decided as a team, the 5 of us, that this person would have to go back to military service and go to the unit. So the person was in California, I'm in Virginia. I got to think about this for 5 hours on the flight. Then I'm in my rental car going out to the event. And then after the event's over with, I have to pull the person aside and then tell them that they're no longer going to be in the program. And they took it very well. I mean, it was cordial and, you know, understand and everything. And by the time I got back, and I'm, you know, applauding myself in the back and get back to Virginia, by the time I got back, there was a congressional that the person had filed to remain in the program. So a congressional is you write your congressperson, and your congressperson gets involved and says, hey, how come you're doing this to this person, this individual? And you have to respond to that, right, within a certain amount of time. So there's a congressional that's there. And I say, well, you know, we got all the data, all the records and everything, all the chances. And I don't begrudge her for doing that, you know, the person for doing that, because that's their right. They certainly can do that. Where the ethics broke down in it was the leadership, the staff leadership decided before to answer that congressional to reinstate her into the program.
Wow. Working
That
with you
sent me through the roof. So it took a long time for me to trust again in that environment. Because think about it, I'm coming out of the military where you have to have your buddies back in battle. It's the only thing they teach you is the trust factor of, if I'm shooting this way, somebody's got my 6 over here, so I don't have to worry about that right now. You got my 6, and they didn't do it. That person didn't do it. And so that, for 6 years, that was drilled in me. And now this came out where it was like a rip. It was, it was so deep and so scarful that I think it's hard for me to think about it right now, even that, you know, I would never want to do that to somebody and just undercut them after they have said that we've gone one situation, fall on the sword, do something, take the lumps, whatever you got to do, but you don't undercut the trust.
Did you have to work with that person then as a team?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Because we're on the team together. That was our unit.
How did it turn out?
I mean, I understood. I changed my behaviors. That's what I did. To be honest, I changed my behaviors around that individual. So I would hold information back. I wouldn't give everything forward. And I know it's not the right thing to do, but that's what I did.
Well, if you don't trust someone, it might be the right thing to do. It's not the political thing to do, but it might be the right thing to do.
And so I knew that this person probably wasn't going to have my back if I jumped out on a limb for an athlete or for anyone. And eventually there was another incident that happened. There was, wasn't with this person, but another person where that did come to a head, and I would have to have somebody actually fight for me because of doing something ethically right. And they chose not to. So I was actually removed. I was fired from that position. You know, something I was building. I put the first athlete on the team, on the Army's team, since like the 1970s to go to the Olympic Games. I had recruited, my process was working, but I had to leave because I wouldn't do something that was unethical. I wouldn't, you know, I won't get in the story, but I just wouldn't do it. And so I was like, I'm not going to write that because that's not the right thing to do. We've already told this group over here this thing, and this other group should have the same opportunity. If they don't, then reinstate these people and keep those people. If you're going to get rid of these people, then get rid of those people. And I wouldn't write the article or the justification for it. So the next day I was out.
well, good for you. I mean, we know that fair, just, and right often result in us not having great outcomes. It's a sacrifice sometimes to stick to our ethics. And that's one of the questions.
It's not good in the moment.
No, it does not feel good.
It doesn't feel good in the moment, but afterward, what I found every single time there's something that's happened, and the opposite's true too, where I wasn't the one that was acting ethically, right? So the other individual began to have power over others because you took the higher ground. And so now the other, I don't care who knows it, who wrote the newspapers, but between you two, you know exactly what went down. And there is a hierarchy that happens inside that. Mine actually took place where I went back and was able to go to a different position and have influence over the other organization without even being part of it. So, and that happened twice. And I found that the other way too, you know, when I haven't done something, usually in my household with my wife, and I haven't been, you know, I said I'm going to the grocery store, but I went someplace else, right? And she found out about it. Then she now has kind of like that power over. So, you know, you did this, so therefore you've lost trust, and we have to regain that back. So those are things we do, and we don't often will share. But if I want to share one side of the road, I'm going to share the other side as well.
That's very brave.
Betrayal is a terrible thing.
Yes.
You know, you spend years, you spend a lifetime building trust, and you can lose it in an instant. And, you know, I think we've all experienced times when people did not live up to our expectations, and it's painful.
It's painful.
I mean, we had a guest over once, 93-year-old man. And he was telling this story about how at his bar mitzvah, which was 13 years old, someone had made a hurtful comment to him.
Mm.
And I thought, my gosh, 80 years earlier,
right?
A careless remark, and it still is giving this person pain.
Yes.
You know, we have to be so careful. And I mean, it goes back to the conversation we were having earlier that, you know, this is part of why we don't reach out and we don't initiate, because we're afraid that we're going to be misunderstood. And it really has to do with the cultural norms.
Hmm.
If we as a society accept that it's okay to ask questions from a place of being well-intentioned, of being genuinely curious, of wanting to make that connection, then we can get past a lot of this stuff. But we have to expect more from ourselves while being a little more accommodating to others.
I love that, Rabbi.
I think that's very well said. And Charlotte says, John, how do you keep hope if you have seen a lot of this unethical doings and goings on?
It's, you know, Charlotte, that's a great question. It's really hard. Here's my, I was thinking about, I saw your chat comment come in, and I've been writing some things down just on that as well, because that's a great question. I really believe it has to do with understanding who you are. The more you're grounded in yourself and you know your values and who you show up as, then you can hold fast to that. It's not about if somebody else has, if we're angry about somebody else doing something to us, then they remain have a power over us. If we're losing sleep because of what somebody has said, and I get that, what the rabbi has just said, absolutely. If we're losing sleep over it, then what's happening is those folks are sleeping peacefully at night. And we're the ones wrestling and stirring and stewing over all of that, the things that somebody may have said. So we have to know exactly who we are. And that gets back to, once again, to telling our truth about who we are. And I'm valuable, and I'm worthy, and I'm worth. I've been created in the image of this God. And how dare somebody say that my image is tainted because of that, right? So we have to stand firm in who we are. And I think that's the hope that gets us through. When truth outweighs fear, we commit to a courageous life.
Ooh, that's pithy. Say that again.
When truth outweighs fear, we commit to a courageous life.
Wow.
You can see that on my LinkedIn.
that is
Yeah.
way cool.
And of course,
yet,
people
I think-
misunderstand courage, right? Courage
Yes.
is not the absence of fear.
No,
Courage is confronting fear.
right. And acting despite of it.
And we keep talking about how hard it is to be courageous.
Right.
And many of us are not perfect, right? Like none of us are.
Right.
And so sometimes we're afraid to be courageous because we're afraid these sneaky truths will come out. And when I've consulted with anyone who's in the public eye, I tell them, sit your family and friends down and tell them these sneaky truths. Because then you don't have to live in fear. They already know it.
Right.
And it's better that they hear it from you than from someone else. And we all make mistakes. It's about being courageous in who we are. And from every mistake, hopefully we've learned something, right?
Mm-hmm. Gil Meyer retired as a 2-star general. And one of the things I learned a lot of things from him. Walk around the office, talk to people. But his first day on the job, when he left the Community and Family Support Center, U.S. Army Community and Family Support Center, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, he went over to the public affairs office at the Pentagon. First day on the job, the sexual scandal happened at Aberdeen Proving Ground. He had the tailhook issue that happened up with, the Navy had their issue, the Air Force had their issue, and now it's the Army's turn about to go through this. So he took, instead of doing the playbook of the Air Force and the Navy when they're in their scandals, he said, we're going to jump out ahead of this, and we're going to say what we know up front, everything we know right now, and then we'll get back with you on when we start filling in the pieces, so that reporters weren't finding, like a lion with fresh meat, just kind of pulling on it. And he did. That taught me, like what you were saying, is get out ahead of it.
Yes.
So the power is gone from it. And that might be painful in the moment, but later on it saves you. Oh, I already knew about that. Right. So somebody can't use it as a tool, as a weapon against you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't twist it, because if someone's using something as a tool, they're going to twist it in a way that when you defend yourself, it makes you look even worse than if you had been up front from the beginning. Right.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's interesting.
I love that.
In fact, this actually figures into one of the holiest days in the Jewish calendar, on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, which is also called the Day of Judgment. And we blow the shofar, we blow a ram's horn. And the sages say that blowing the horn, it confuses Satan. So what does that mean? It confuses Satan. I mean, we've been doing this for a few thousand years. Why is he still getting confused? Because what we're doing is we are calling ourselves to judgment. We're saying we accept that we've made mistakes. We want to take responsibility for them. We want to commit ourselves to doing better. And so we blow the horn to call ourselves to judgment. Well, what's Satan going to do now? He can't accuse us, because we've already stepped forward and taken responsibility, and we're prepared to be accountable. And that kind of integrity, it's the word integrity, Stephen L. Carter says, comes from the word integer, which is a whole number. Integrity means being a whole person, no inconsistencies, no hypocrisies, no double standards. When we aspire to that, and others recognize that we are, then they trust us. And then we can have those kinds of trusting relationships.
Love it.
Wow, that's great. Well, you know, I'm Roman Catholic, and we have the confessional, and it's all about accountability and the intent to do better. And I think that that is what you're talking about there, you know, blowing a horn. That sounds like a great thing to do, hold ourselves accountable. I often recommend people do that regularly as a habit. What worked, what didn't, how was I unkind? Was I lying to myself or someone else? And do it in a non-judgmental way, but just with curiosity, so that you can really let the truth shine. And I think that's important. Well, maybe it's time for the word of the day, Rabbi. What do you think?
Well, let me pause for a moment.
All right.
Because the word of the day is interstice, which means a pause or a gap. And in being ethical, this is so important because so often we are reactive. Something happens, we're confronted with a challenge, a difficulty, a problem, a situation, and we react. And to take that pause, to think through what, not how will I react, but how should I respond? You know, they say if you take medicine, the doctor tells you that you responded to the medicine. That's a lot better than if he tells you you reacted to the medicine. Right? And so we want to respond. And that requires a pause, to be thoughtful, to be deliberate, and to really think through how we want to come across and how we want to make the best of each situation.
So for all of the audience, I have a challenge. Think through your life. What truth is it that you think is keeping you from being the person you can be? And decide how you're going to talk to yourself about it, and decide if it's better for you to tell one person, and choose that person wisely. It has to be a kind, wise, discreet person, and not a confessional, but it's just somebody. If one person knows, then we know, and as a Catholic we say, then God knows, right? So this is my challenge to you. What's something in your past, maybe yesterday or this morning, that's holding you back because you're afraid of being in the light, afraid of what's going to be revealed? John Register, what do you say to that about moving forward for all of us who are mere mortals who make mistakes regularly?
There's a lot of things I could say. I know we don't.
You know, you do have a lot of things to say. I'm delighted.
I was going back to say the word again, Rabbi.
Which one?
The word of the day.
Interstice.
Interstice.
Interstice. I was thinking, it made me think about emails and how quickly we might react to an email and
Sure.
send it back, and there's no tone to it, or we infer the tone on the receiving end of it, and how might we respond rather than react to it. So that was where my head went on that, how we can be practical with that. In respect to, you're talking about Roman Catholics, we're talking about the Jewish tradition, and I'm a Christian. So in that, I was saying that, how do we even live the law? Because the law is there, the Ten Commandments, no one can keep it. So we say that inside of that, we give that up. We just say we can't do it. That doesn't mean we continue on in that sin, but what we do is we acknowledge, and that can only be done by one person. We say that's Christ that's done that and taken that for us, so that now we're hidden behind it. The law is actually concealed in the Old Testament, revealed in the New. And then the final thing, what was it? What'd you say, Margarita?
Which the idea of how do we move forward as mere mortals with the courage to face the truth and invite someone to share our truth.
It's the individual process. I say it's always the individual's choice to do that assessment, and then have the courage to make the jump, because the jump is the jump. No one can do it for you. You can read all the books you want to. You can get the 10 points to do this and the 5 things to do that. But the only one that can really make the jump across the chasm to the other side, to what I call is the kind of the rebirthing of our mindset again, is the individual. You have to make the jump. And once you get over there, you probably, oh, I made it. But there's a harder climb to get up now, because now once you've made it and you've made the commitment, now everything else is going to, everything that wanted to pull you back is going to say you didn't make the right choice. And you have to be so strong in that now that you can begin to climb this other mountain. And then you get up to a point of resolution, a point of resolve. I know exactly who I am. I'm walking confidently now. I can see the end of this kind of step that I'm on right here. And when I make that step, I'm on the next one. I can kind of take a breath before I make the next journey up for the next thing I have to do.
There's your pause again, Rabbi.
Pause.
That's right.
All right,
Actually, I would like to, I have a story, but I'd like to invite you, John, to tell it if you're comfortable, because you may know it better than I do. You know, we've known each other for a few years now, and you're the only Paralympian that I know. And literally just a few weeks ago, I learned that the person who started the Paralympics was actually an Orthodox Jew.
Yes.
Which of course resonated with me. Are you familiar with that story to tell it to us?
I am. I hope it's the same one that you know.
Well, if not, I'm sure it's worthwhile.
So in 1948, you know, there's this war that's going on over in Europe, and Dr. Sir Ludwig Gutmann, he gets out of Nazi Germany and goes to England, in London, outside of London, and in this location, he builds a hospital to start with all the war injured who have come back, who have primarily spinal cord injuries, who are dying because of their spinal cord injuries, because there was no medicine or no kind of care for them. He started using some treatments that use sports as part of the rehabilitation. One, to get the body functioning and active, and also the mind to see what was possible. And because they were aggregating, these soldiers were aggregating together and had this grit and determination together, the sport of basketball, wheelchair basketball, really was helping them survive. And the rates of mortality going down with those that were spinal cord injured in the battlefield actually started stopping. You know, they were less and less because of his techniques. And that those sporting events were the foundation, and his vision founded the Paralympic movement. So in 1948, he has his first games. Then 1960, the first Paralympic Games in Rome happened. And then we go on to kind of keeps on going over and over again, to where now we are the parallel games to the Olympics. So the word para does not mean paraplegic. It actually means parallel to the Olympic and the Paralympic Games. So Dr. Sir Ludwig Gutmann, he is the founder, the father of the Paralympic movement.
And what I love about the story is that he inherited a situation. He could have simply accepted the status quo.
Right.
But he saw veterans, heroes, descending into depression and death. And he thought, what can I do to try to reverse this? And it's that refusal to accept that the situation is what it is, when perhaps I can find a way of making it better. That, I think, really speaks to the essence of ethics.
Yeah, you know, I was just talking to a friend of mine earlier before this call, and he's just nominated. He's one of our musicians in our church. He was just nominated for a one of those music award, big music awards. He's fantastic, but one of those guys that just doesn't really understand his total value because he's so brilliant. And he just kind of goes along through life, and he's like, oh my gosh. So he's nominated for a Stella Award. And I was just sharing with him about, I said, it doesn't surprise me about you at all. And I think what Dr. Gutmann and this gentleman also see is they see life, they see humanity, and they see the value of that human life and the value of the humanity that we all can have with them. And that surpasses anything else that is in their life, because they want to make it better for other individuals. And so they're just going about their day. They're just, this is what they just do. And all of a sudden people are like, oh my gosh, that's the most brilliant thing ever. Because they see it from a different standpoint, while they're just making life happen for other individuals. And that's why I think that's the essence of those kids back in the airport who are just asking the innocent question. What's going on with his leg, Mom, Dad? What's happening? I just want to know, why are we different? I don't understand this. Help me understand.
Brilliant callback.
Yeah.
And it also resonates with what my father would have said. If you don't know the next best step in your own misery, do something for someone else.
Yeah.
And that's what your friend and Dr. Gutman were doing.
Brilliant.
If you don't know where to go, look to the left or right and do something for someone there.
Mm-hmm.
That always helps. We have one more question here. Oh, Charlotte was just saying, thank you. Great discussion. Well, you know what? You have been fabulous. I hope you come and join us again, John Register.
Oh, this has been awesome. I love this. I could talk
It
to you
really has
all day.
And I could speak with both of you gentlemen for a long time about a variety of things. That would be lovely. So I wish everyone in the audience well. I put in the links for John Register so you can see his TED Talk and catch his podcast. I put in his book information from Amazon. Do what you can to learn more from him, because the next best step may very well be mired for you in some of his doings and some of his ideas. Mm. So, gentlemen, do you want to have a final word before we sign off?
Mine is always, go forth, inspire your world. Go is your command, forth is your direction, inspire is your vocation. This is your personal work, only you can do it. World, because it's your sphere of influence. Go forth, inspire your world.
Wow.
I think that's a great place to leave off.
Yeah, I don't think we can do any better than that. Everyone, good luck, have fun, and be well.